Welcome to the most important part of the World History series, World War II. This video will cover not only the history of the war, geography, and borders, but also Hitler's life, Germany's second attempt to change the fate of the world, the European Union, and even the history of the world economy. Today, you will understand why America is strong. We will discuss the Normandy invasion, Pearl Harbor, and everything else. So, where did we leave off in world history? World War I happened. The magnificent Habsburg dynasty, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, alongside Germany, and the whole world, America got involved and so on. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. At the end of all that transition, the world is exactly in such a place in 1919. As you can see on the screen right now, changes occurred even in 1920, after World War I ended in 1919. We will go through the map by map. You will constantly see the map on the screen. Watch a long video. Make sure to watch it. Now we are talking about a war in which more than 50 million people died. There were more than 50 million people in World War II. This corresponds to approximately 85 million civilians wearing military uniforms. So, imagine that 90 million people are entering the war, and 50 million people, including civilians, are dying. The only country that remains untouched throughout the entire war is America, because Germany, Poland, Lithuania, Russia, in short, everyone is entering the war, and it is taking place on their territories. There is nothing like that in America. A significant portion of American civilians is even unaware of World War II. It exists, but depression happened. In information, it's non-existent. Where is the war? At that time, there was no internet. Newspapers defined reality. America is not stupid. It should explain everything so clearly. Afterwards, when it intervenes in the war, a new image of America will emerge from its entry and exit in World War II. So, when World War II began, America was not yet economically dominating the world. But during World War II, it had also lent money to the French and the British, just as it had during World War I. America is increasingly becoming the economic big brother and protector of the world. Therefore, the number one factor in creating America's strong dollar today is World War II. Now, what is the difference compared to World War I? So, what difference did World War II make? World War I was more about the conquest of colonies and territories. It was about sharing the world. World War II is the clash of ideologies such as communism, fascism, and Nazism, triggered by the freedoms that emerged from World War I will rule the world. I mean Hitler, whose life I will soon tell you about. We are talking about a madman who even painted. We are talking about a young officer who wrote a 700-page manifesto, then a dictator. If Hitler had not had the madness of thinking he would rule the world, and if America had not entered the war, and if some things had gone differently in Russia, Hitler would have controlled all of Europe today. When you look at World War I, more than 100 million people died, and 20 million were injured. In World War II, these figures were, of course, a bit higher, with around 55 million deaths. The sides in World War I are somewhat different. In World War I, there are central powers inside. Here are Germany, Hungary, Austria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Turkey, which is also present. Who was against Germany, Austria, and Hungary in World War I? When history is being produced, Austria and Hungary are portrayed as insignificant. In World War I, Austria and Hungary were a great power. Habsburg dynasty. In World War II, the significance of Her Majesty's Australia had diminished greatly. This is because in World War I, it faced England, Russia, France, Italy, Japan, and America. Japan did not support that at the time. It is not providing support to Germany, like it did during World War II. Because I will tell you about Japan's developments during this World War II, Japan is going crazy. If you think World War I took place only in Europe, that's very wrong. There are tremendous battles in Africa and Asia. I will tell you about Pearl Harbor shortly. I said maybe in about half an hour or so. Japan has gone crazy. Japan is invading Manchuria, China, and so on. They have such high egos. The sides in World War II are somewhat different. The parts we refer to as the Axis powers in World War II are Germany, Japan, and Italy. This time, England and France are facing each other. In fact, it starts with France. The war begins with France in World War II. England is making a drop. If France took it seriously, perhaps the war would end very early. France does not take it seriously when Hitler goes mad. England says, of course, to Hitler. Then they realize the situation is serious. They ask for help from America. America initially provides material support and does not send many troops. Then, even China and the Soviet Union get involved. They engage everyone with America's presidents. At the end of World War I, there was a disintegrated Germany, a disbanded Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Soviet Socialist republics, which were heading towards immense internal turmoil. Throughout the video, when I refer to Russia, you may hear this in the context of the Soviet Socialist republics, as well as the name Russia as it was in the 90s. When I mention Russia, it does not fully correspond to the title it held during that period, because in the 1919-1920 map, Ukraine is sometimes there, sometimes not in Russia. Therefore, the outcome of World War I is somewhat different. In World War II, there is the defeat of Germany and Japan. World War I is a war of coal and steel. World War II is more of a war of airplanes and jet fuel. Because airplanes changed the course of things significantly. So how did World War II begin? In fact, it started at the end of World War I. The Versailles Treaty. In the Versailles Treaty, such provisions were signed for Germany that you can see the map of 1919. It looked like this. Even just a year later, there were significant changes on the map. These were the changes that initiated World War II. If you pay attention, Poland is seizing the Danzig region, which will divide Germany in two. Of course, this is granted by the countries that won the war. What right does Poland have to do this on its own? A significant part of the Danzig region belongs to that city. It prevents the Germans from accessing the sea, the Baltic Sea. Think of the League of Nations as actually managing what is today the World Union and so on, the United Nations. But this is not the only loss of territory. Czechoslovakia's gaining of the northern part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is also an important development, a new state. The absolute power of the Austro-Hungarian Empire from the previous war is now powerless. It is losing territory. When you look at it, Germany in the 19th and 20th centuries and the majesties of Australia are in a very complicated situation. So it cannot even speak out against those who have seized its lands. Moreover, the Treaty of Versailles is a complete capitulation agreement. Now, we need to think about this. Was the Versailles Treaty harsh? It was very harsh. It consisted of 440 articles. Now, when you look at the 440 articles, I can't count them all one by one, but overall, it was a heavy burden. 132 billion German gold marks. The mark will change. I will explain that shortly. Now I will interrupt here. We will see 4 types of marks. Know which period each of these marks belongs to in the German currency. The German gold mark, which emerged in 1871, is actually named after its price, in gold. There is a currency that is indexed to gold. This was printed in exchange for gold in Germany and was one of the most valuable currencies in the world. It dates back to 1918. In 1918, due to the First World War in 1914, the paper mark, which is paper money, was introduced, ending in 18. This directly replaces the gold mark, and the transition process is actually where the gold standard was abandoned. This is quite absurd, because at some point 100 million marks eventually add zeros to become 50 million or 100 million billion marks. Then, the Renten mark is introduced. It comes out in 1923, when excessive money circulation leads to hyperinflation, and they remove quite a few zeros from the currency. They remove about 12 zeros from the money, and this is what it looks like. One brand equals about 1 trillion marks. Of the previous one, then remark comes into use. Remark is used between 1924 and 1948. As you can see, they are removing zeros because the previous currency has lost value, specifically around 10 to the power of 12. But does it stop afterwards? After that, a German brand emerges that those in their 40s, whom I have seen but you have not, recognize. This was used in West Germany from 1948 until 1990. After reunification, it gradually decreases. And after 1999, they switched to the euro. So the Germans actually changed their currency a total of 5 times. There were reparations, war reparations. This amounts to about $450 billion in today's money. Of course, Hitler would stop paying this money when he went mad, but one way or another, Germany's obligation to pay $450 billion in today's money, which was 132 billion gold German marks at that time, is something close to impossible. The region of Alsace-Lorraine that you see on the map is being given to France. It is a region that has caused hatred between the Germans and France. The Saar region is being left to France, as this is the coal mine of the Germans. This is the center of all energy. Hitler needs this area very much during World War II. Do not forget this Saar region. Hitler starts the war by entering the Saar and the Ruhr. There is the open region, Malmedy and Moncho. These areas are being assigned to Belgium. Memel is being assigned to Lithuania. The upper part, known as Silesia, is being taken by Poland, along with a portion of West Prussia. Czechoslovakia is taking another part. Let's lean back for a moment. It's not just about losing territory. The second largest navy in the world belongs to the Germans. The British and the French say that they want this navy for themselves. Because we need to understand this better, the French want the Germans to disband, and the English want them to not exist. The English want to ensure that the pre-war trade system is re-established, so they can sell something to the Germans. The French, on the other hand, say, let's bring them to their knees and eliminate them. Now, new powers are emerging from German territories. Here, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, and Poland are growing in these lands. They are prohibiting the Germans from forming an army, a large army. They are banning submarine production. All the major ports are already besieged by the British and the French. Under blockade, they are not even building ships, nor can they build warships, let alone warships. Apart from basic food supplies, the import of steel and metal that they will use in industry. For example, to build ships and airplanes is being blocked by Norway and Switzerland. They are turning the good Germans against each other. The German economy is at the brink of starvation. The people are suffering from hunger. Right now, they are creating a 50-kilometer gap to the east and west of the Rhine that you see on the screen. They say Germany will not conduct military activity here. Hitler is already planning to invade this area. Now, the Germans had those coal-producing areas in Saar, and the French had taken control of them. The French wanted 7 million tons of coal from here over a period of 10 years. It says, extract for us like a slave. Now let's look inside Germany. What is the situation in Germany? Germany has collapsed economically. It was declared a republic in a truly ignorant and excited manner. The emperor fled the country. There is a military force composed of officers and soldiers, which will later give rise to the Nazis. There is a force that supports the republic and the government. The people have an armed force because there was no police system at that time. Inside, let's say there are two and a half armed groups. Let's also count the half as belonging to the people. The system and power are in conflict with each other. Germany actually did not have a healthy government at that time. I repeat, do not forget that for the French president and prime minister at that time, Germany was a problem because it is their land neighbor. If it gains strength, it will attack me. It's not a problem for England. The Prime Minister of England, Lloyd George, says that we should let it live, not kill it too much. We shouldn't rush to take the reparations immediately. Do you know why he says this? A Germany without a navy is not a problem for England. As long as it doesn't cross the sea, England is an island. Britain is an island nation. He wants Germany to thrive. Let him say, give me money, so he can trade, and all of Germany can trade with Europe, but let it live. The real problem is in America. Why? America is giving them money to help them win World War I. Who is it giving to? It is giving to France. Who is it giving to? It is giving to England. Where will they get the money from? From Germany, through war reparations. Germany is not in a position to pay this money. I'm very sorry, but in this situation, who does the burden fall on? I mean, who is financially affected? America. America says to France and England, you need to pay off this debt already. I supported you in the war. France and England are saying that they are also in a bad situation. Germany will give it to you as it pays. Is Germany borrowing directly from America? I will explain from the economics section shortly. America is lending money so that Germany does not go bankrupt and can pay off its debts. Does it sound familiar? Wait, we will get there. Look, I won't forget Normandy, Pearl Harbor. We will cover all of them. Lloyd George, that is, England, is calculating something else in the meantime. The Ottoman Empire has collapsed. During the period of Mustafa Kemal, the Republic is about to be declared, and Greece begins to receive covert support in the form of money and weapons, so that it can seize as much land as possible from the Aegean coasts. At that time, England's eyes were on the straits and England's eyes were on the shores of Burj. England was after something else in Izmir. While England is playing this out, France and Germany are not paying any attention to it. Meanwhile, of course, England is calculating this, Lord George, but pushing Greece back in the War of Independence, even with the English supporting Greece on that front, will end Lord George's career as well. Let me say that from the start. Ataturk does not agree at all during that period. The naive loser of World War I is Italy. Why? Because Germany wants the Flum and Dalmatia coastlines that you see on the map right now. The English and French joined very late, after World War I. You know, Italy joins very late. They silence by saying, of course, give up Trieste. No one pays attention to Italy. Italy cannot rise up and claim rights. Italy has lost 700,000 soldiers. All right, you step aside like that. Let's take the kids off the track. They are silencing Italy. Italy's expenses are high and they have lost soldiers. For this reason, you will see Italy on Turkish territory, especially in the Mediterranean. Italy says that we couldn't eat much bread after World War I. From here, we are gradually the Ottomans. We are also at the port in the Mediterranean. We can go by sea. Can we seize the lands of the Ottoman Empire down below while the English are distracted? Italy will also do this math, and it will backfire. As we slowly move from the effects and causes of World War I to World War II, we should not overlook America. Normally, America would not have entered the war. It's like an event happening far from the land, saying to me, during World War I, it was sitting on the sidelines eating seeds. It wouldn't even enter into it. America was forced to enter both wars. The reason for entering the war is this. The Germans were constantly stirring up trouble with the Mexicans. They told Mexico to attack America, claiming it was for independence and all that, my friend. And the Germans have submarines. These German submarines are greatly disrupting America's overseas trade. They are attacking and so on. Because the public in America revolted a lot, and there was great pressure in public opinion. On April 6, 1917, America says to Germany, I am here. America declares war on Germany, meaning this is how America entered the war. The unfortunate part is that 115,000 soldiers died, and this could not be communicated to the public later. Fortunately, there was no internet at that time. If there had been, America might have fallen. It would have transitioned to a new government within itself. It gained nothing. Instead, it lost money in a war and cannot gain territory either. No one is giving land to America either. Therefore, World War I is actually a bit unpleasant for America. When the Germans sat at the table in Versailles, they were actually expecting simple things. Okay, we will pay a little war compensation. I don't know, we can just give them the Alsatian quota or something. The French already know what they want. They probably think the English will take the colonies. They might distribute the navy or something like that. We can get out of here. Versailles comes to them with 440 articles. The German government is in a frenzy. They are immediately gathering their staff and the army. They are saying, should we continue the war? What is this, they say. If we accept Article 440, we are already done for. The commanders are saying, honestly, we can't conduct a war. Let me tell you. This is a problem for us because there is no raw material to fight with. We are hungry, there are no resources, and there is no ammunition. The agricultural system has already collapsed here. We are also in a terrible situation in terms of labor force. We cannot manage the war, sorry to say. So much so that the Chancellor, which is the Prime Minister in today's terms, is referred to as Chancellor in Germany. He is resigning to avoid signing the agreement. The loser is resigning to avoid putting his signature on it. They are being forced to sign. Now, although it may seem that the Versailles Treaty has brought Germany to its knees, everyone knows that it cannot pay the reparations. The aim is to keep Germany in a state where it cannot recover for a long time, and to turn it into a colonial state. No one can say it like that. A historian cannot just say that Germany was attempted to be colonized or something like that. Germany's attempt to have Danzig given to Poland is also trying to divide the German society. At the end of World War II, you will see the East and West Germany in the following times. However, at the end of World War I, a small Prussia is actually forming on the Eastern Germany side. But was it always bad? The English and French of that era weren't making particularly clever moves. Now Germany has lost 65,000 square kilometers of territory and 7 million in population. These are not trivial losses. They are quite serious and significant. However, something interesting happened on the Russian side as well. They have begun to protect themselves from an impending war in the east with Czechoslovakia and Poland. A buffer state has formed there. The border with Russia has disappeared. Germany is no longer hesitant on the Eastern Front. Was the Treaty of Versailles the end of everything? Did Europe believe it would be peaceful? Indeed. In fact, there is a French commander at the head of all the Allied forces, Marshal Foch. He says, meaning, from today's perspective, don't be too foolish, of course. He says this is not a peace agreement. He says this is a 20-year truce, but in 20 years, the Germans will cause us trouble again. Isn't 20 years a universe? Is this agreement signed in Versailles on June 28, 1919? Exactly 20 years and 64 days later, look, actually, 64 days have also been missed. The war begins on September 1st, 1939. Well, Dad said 20 years, right? The calendar seems a bit off. Exactly 20 years later, we indeed see the beginning of World War II. During this period, when you look at Germany, the politicians in power do not say that we lost the war after the war. They say that we were betrayed by coup-plotting politicians and Jews who wanted to overthrow the monarchy. Otherwise, we did not lose the war or anything. The roots of anti-Semitism start from here. Now, Moses and Jewish people are often confused. Judaism exists in the sense of following Moses. However, being Jewish refers to an ethnicity. It comes from Jacob. Therefore, please, do not think of Jew and Mosaic as the same thing in your mind, but they have been very similar at certain periods in world history. At the head of the German General Staff was a man named Erich Ludendorff. This Erich Ludendorff was the highest authority in World War I. In fact, in September 1918, he was the one who told Kaiser Wilhelm II, the emperor at the time, "We cannot win the war, father. The war is coming to an end." He signs the Treaty of Versailles. Erich Ludendorff comes out and says that we did not lose. We had the power to win. We were betrayed from behind with a knife. Even at that time, it existed. They say we were conditioned. The Socialist Party that came to power after the war also supports the lie in the same way. Germany still has the power to fight. A strong Germany, a super Germany. The world envies us. In March 1920, there is a coup in Germany. This general, the incompetent plum, is Ludendorff. The Allied forces are indirectly taking over the government. The government is fleeing to Stuttgart. They are going to Stuttgart, but they are still gaining strength. They are keeping the workers very well in their hands. They are making 12 million workers go on strike. This strike is bringing life in Germany to a standstill. Here we are meeting a new person. A young officer is boarding a plane to intervene in this coup event at this very moment. He says he will fly from Berlin to be involved in this incident. It says that the plane is seized by striking workers at the airport where it landed. So how did we get here? In fact, Hitler was someone who had previously fought on the front. He becomes temporarily blind due to a gas attack. When he is temporarily blind, he receives treatment. After receiving treatment, he returns to Munich. He is arrested at this airport along with friends. At that time, his rank was 10. They will line all of this up to take down that mess, and the world will be rid of Hitler. An officer says, "I know this Hitler." He says that his friends are good people. He says not to shoot them. They are changing the fate of the world. Just let it go. Is Hitler getting away from that? At the very moment when Hitler's star, his fate, is turning. Germany is struggling in hunger and filth. 600,000 German civilians are dying just because of this, from hunger and filth. Is the Spanish flu hitting them too? 200,000 Germans are dying like this. In fact, we have just briefly rewound back to the beginning here. In the midst of this turmoil, Germany elects a president. In 1919, Friedrich Ebert comes to power. Ebert seems to be in office forever, or rather, until his death. In 1918, he chooses a Filipino brother for himself. This also declares the republic with something called the November Revolution in Germany. He gets excited and declares a kind of republic. In 1919, there is another story. Poland takes over West Prussia. There is not little in Poland. Who does Poland trust? It trusts England and France. England and France will always betray Poland from now on. England, France, especially France, says, "Trust me." Poland says, "Trust me, I'm here, make your move." Come on, man. The period of the Republic in Germany is called the Weimar Republic period. It lasted from 1919 to 1933. Now, Weimar has a constitution, and it is very liberal. However, there is a provision in Article 48 that is somewhat self-defeating. One of the things that enabled Hitler's emergence is this. The German president, if he experiences an extraordinary situation, look, not the German Chancellor, can temporarily take away the freedom and all rights of the people if he wishes. Of course, this creates a problem. With Hitler becoming the German Chancellor in 1933, why? I would explain it when we get there, but let me bring it up now. 1 month after Hitler became the German Chancellor, he abolishes the presidential system. He merges the presidency with the chancellorship. Normally, the German president can take away the rights of the people if he wishes. Since he merged the presidency with the chancellorship, Hitler becomes a military power at that time and creates a concept known as Führer. Let's call him a dictator. This man becomes the German chancellor and starts to absorb the presidency, managing the country with a one-man system, dictatorship. So, what is the situation in other countries? Let's bring back the map of 1920. England is in internal turmoil because they have also faced some economic difficulties, which have strained the war economy. Their concern is Greece's invasion of Turkey. America is withdrawing its troops from Europe, but cannot replace what it has spent in the war. France, on the other hand, is focusing on Germany rather than Turkey. It is not concerned with seizing land from Turkey. Instead, it is trying to encroach upon German territory because it has a land border. Now, Versailles tells the Germans in 1919 that from now on, tanks, warplanes, ships, and research and development are prohibited. This works for 3 years until 1922, but the Germans are very clever. They say, provide us with R&D not on your own land, but on Russian soil, and you help us develop our technology. They are negotiating with the Russians, referring to raw materials and other matters. The Russians have their own calculations and different mathematics. They want to take over Eastern Europe because, later, when things escalate, and Hitler's true intentions come to light. Hitler says, don't enter the war, just support me, and don't cause me any trouble. I will take over Europe from within, and I will give you Eastern Europe. How? It says. Russia says, good, thank you. There will be no war on my land. The events during the period between World War I and World War II are as follows. There is something called the German mark. Do you know what the German mark is indexed to? Gold. After World War II, the dollar will be like that. Now, when the war started, the war was very intense. World War I went very badly for Germany, so they disrupt the balance by printing as many German marks as the amount of gold you have. Normally, if you are printing money backed by gold in the world, you need to have that much gold in your treasury. Later, America will cheat the world like this. The Germans are trying to print money as they please. Why? Because we will win the war anyway. After winning the war, we will seize the nation's mines. The region known as Alsace-Lorraine, which belongs to the French, is very important economically for them. There are rich mines there. We will conquer Belgium, we will conquer Luxembourg. Since money will come from these places anyway, the name of our currency at that time, which was the mark, is Reichsmark, meaning imperial mark. There is also the dollar, and I have a desire for that. And there is also Reichsmark. These are very important. Let me explain it to you this way. Before World War I began in 1914, the Germans had 4 marks for $1. It was 4.2 marks for $1. When the war ended, Germany was in such a collapse that you could get 49 German marks for $1. The currency lost 10 times its value. Nobody cared. In 1921, 2 years later, when Germany pays war reparations, its currency becomes so worthless that you can get 330 marks for $1. If you cannot pay your debt, your money will lose value significantly. If you print money, hyperinflation will occur. Germany is suffering. France says that I want precious metals and gold from you now. Is that not possible either? I have a region called Roux. I want that industrial area in Roux, and the region where the mine is located. There is industry there too. He says, I will collapse this place. The French are blockading it with soldiers. There is no army in Germany anyway. But the Germans are saying that they are taking their workers on strike and they are not working. No one can force them to work. There is no slavery. There is the Treaty of Versailles. The Germans are also going on strike. Now, neither the Germans can gain anything from there, nor can the French gain anything. That region is suffering. But it is hitting the German economy. It is hurting the Germans. At that time, Germany cannot collect taxes. The state's need comes from 1% of its income from taxes. The people are poor and can't pay taxes. No system for collecting taxes. $1 is 4 trillion German marks. And even now, the 50 billion marks you see on the screen are entering circulation. Some say it's 50 trillion in the meantime. Huge brands are coming into play. German money is now like toilet paper, incredibly worthless. 1 loaf of bread was 163 marks in 1922. In 1923, just a year later, it rose to 200 billion marks for 1 loaf of bread. This is such a huge economic collapse that today we might compare it a bit to Argentina and Venezuela, but it is even worse than that. Employees are taking hourly time. We agree.
I say I will paint this wall. I throw out 10 marks. I shake it. It could be 10 billion marks or just 10 marks. I am painting half of the wall. The work is finishing. Half is done. I say it's now 11 marks. The work is finishing 12 marks. So, office workers and civil servants are receiving daily wage increases, they are getting hourly raises, and Germany is in a terrible state. Money has no value at all. Therefore, since money is worthless, items like hats, underwear, or even hygiene products like soap are used for barter instead of money, instead of the German mark. In restaurants, there are no prices on the menus. They are making Hitler's trial public for the sake of setting an example for the people. But Hitler's oratory power is incredible, my friend. He is given a 5-year prison sentence, but he is released after 9 months. Moreover, while in prison, he writes a 700-page book titled Mein Kampf. They are making it incredibly famous, calling it the name of resistance, the people, and rebellion, especially those who love violence. During this period, a merger emerges especially between the center-right and left, forming a coalition. In other words, everything revolves around Hitler being the leader. He speaks very well. The oratory skills of such dictators are very good. They can easily deceive the public through their speeches. Now, why are the right and left uniting? Because the politicians in Germany say that they cannot collect money from the people. Soon, there will be no need for us, and they are dying of hunger. They say, let's form a coalition and lull the public together. There is no other way. Germany is making a move that will start its wonderful years here. Think of it like starting from scratch with money, but transitioning to a new brand, moving to a new currency system. 1 trillion, Reichsmarks, equivalent to the German imperial mark, is being printed as 1 Rentenmark. And this currency consolidates and adjusts the prices of everything. Because think of it as if you are now drinking a brand of soup for 1 trillion. This time, instead of gold, it shows German industry and Germany's real estate as collateral. Again, a Rentenmark, a new mark. 1 German mark equals $1. So, they are actually going back to the year 1914. Now, Germany is economically very collapsed during this period, and America and England are stepping in, while France is not getting involved at all. America and England are coming to the table to propose a new agreement to help Germany recover economically. Otherwise, it will sink, and once it sinks, you won't be able to collect any debts. According to this plan, 4 points are important. Based on this plan, France will end the occupation of the industrial region, which is very important for Germany. From the spirit of the economy of France and Belgium, this is the first point. It tells France to leave that area. England is telling Germany this. Now England is telling America about it. Something that Hitler will be thrilled about, will be so beautiful. The first foolishness is here with England and America. They say to Germany, you can obtain a syndication loan from an important American company, led by JP Morgan, in exchange for 800 million gold marks. I have paid off your debt. And since you can't pay your debt, let's do you a favor. Look, actually, this is also stupid. They say, what is your debt? 132 billion gold marks. They are still calculating it with the old mark. They say, okay, you can't pay 132 billion gold marks. This year, just pay us 1 billion gold marks. The rest is up to you. Who wouldn't want to pay off their debt? You owe the bank $132 billion. So you have a debt of 132,000 lira. Let me calculate that. The bank says to pay only 1,000 lira this year. Well, they are going even further. In the next 5 years, you can only pay 2.5 billion. Oh, let's not burden you with more. Now look, you have a debt of 132,000 lira. The interest will work as mentioned, but when you go to the bank tells you to pay only 1,000 lira in the first year and to pay 2,500 lira within 5 years. What do you say? You'd say we tore up 132,000 lira. Who knows who will live or die in 6 years? This is actually a mistake, because there are now payable debt schedules. The Ruhr industrial zone has recovered. This calendar allows them to borrow from many international countries for what has been done. But of course, they are handing over their economy to the IMF. The IMF of that time, don't forget that. It is a great mistake for Germany to be able to find such loans. Germany finances World War II this way. That's not enough. They also signed something called the Locarno Treaty. In other words, we have done you a great favor. You will also accept the following: the issue related to the land. There are three important points. The first one says that there was the Alsace-Lorraine region with France, with Belgium and France. You won't interfere here. Is that a promise? We are threatening. Germany says, fine, let those areas belong to France and Belgium. There is a second story. This is also important. They are bringing England, France, Italy, Belgium, and America to the table with Germany. They say you will never violate the border in the West, the border between France and Belgium. Is that okay? Okay, Dad. What guarantee can we give you? We also say that France and Belgium will not attack Germany. No way. Germany's eyes are opening, man. We not only restructured the debt, but also, no one will attack me. I will gradually prepare for World War II. Let me gather my strength a bit. If you pity Germany here, Germany will turn around and attack you. In 1926, the League of Nations, the predecessor of the United Nations, accepted Germany. They are even borrowing a loan of 300 million new marks from the Russians. This period is referred to as the Roaring Twenties, which spans from 1924 to 1929. The economy flourishes in both Germany and Japan. Everything is fine in America until October 29th, 1929. There is an economic collapse called Karasala. It is sinking both Europe and America as well as the Germans. This is an economic collapse affecting the entire world. The event that triggered World War I was the economic crisis of 1873. The economic crisis of 1929 triggered World War II. So it's always about poverty. Either there is hunger in my land, or I should seize the other person's land, or I should exploit the gold, minerals, and agriculture in someone else's land. That's the whole story. At the end of World War I, the situation was different for the Russians. If you remember, in 1917, Russia was preoccupied with its own troubles. It was withdrawing from the war as a power. From 1917 to 1922, the Russians are experiencing their own civil war. Later, the rise of Stalin will emerge, leading to internal turmoil. Therefore, just as the Russians were preoccupied with survival at that time, they were heavily indebted to agriculture. Unfortunately, these agricultural debts are causing a major famine in Russia. Let's even say there is a Ukrainian genocide, which they call Holodomor. The Soviets and Russians are condemning Ukraine to starvation. Can you imagine 8 million people dying from hunger? Now, the period after World War I, when America was lending money to the world, including to Germany, was a good time for America, because America was distributing loans. People were taking that money and using it. The problem is that the Fed is very late in raising interest rates to withdraw money. So much so that just before the 1929 crash, industry was strengthening to the point that stock market value tripled right before the crash. Those who struggle to borrow money find it easier to take loans. When the credit interest is low, especially when they cannot find new funds due to the increase in Fed interest. America was also giving out free credit. The moment America suddenly raised the interest rates and said that you can no longer easily borrow at high interest, the tap was turned off, preventing people from entering the stock market. They could not buy shares because they could not invest money in the stock market. When they could not buy shares, the stock market tried to crash. During this period, those in the stock market also tried to get out to secure guaranteed money from interest. America had to shoot itself in the foot, and the collapse came. There is a famine in Russia. While in America, so much grain has been planted that the price of grain is very low. So, economic problems arise from abundance as well. When wheat becomes cheaper, the person producing wheat earns less money and starts spending less on other things. The prices of everything are being pulled down. At that time, wheat was a very important commodity. It was essential for everything. America says, in order to save itself, I no longer lend to the world, at least let me save myself. Therefore, America's quick decision to save itself and close its doors is causing the world to economically decline very rapidly. Another story begins here. Just as Germany faced difficulties with the gold-backed mark, the Fed says that it is no longer required to be gold-backed either. We can slightly adjust the value of the dollar. It doesn't necessarily have to be against the dollar. People are attacking banks. They want to buy gold to move to a safe haven. They want to withdraw foreign currency. They want to take out their dollars and go buy gold. As a result, banks cannot provide the equivalent of this money, leading to a chain reaction of bankruptcies. By the time we reach 1933, half of the existing banks in America are bankrupt. Why? Some have gone bankrupt because they could not provide cash. Others are going bankrupt because the nation is not paying its credit debt and they cannot collect the credit debt. This wave is also hitting Germany. Germany is becoming unable to pay its debts because it cannot borrow money. All of Germany's factories are becoming idle since they can no longer produce anything to sell, as people are continuously buying things when money is abundant. When people's money decreases, demand decreases. When demand decreases, factories stop, prices fall. When factories close, unemployment begins. Germany also descends into chaos. What does a hungry dog do? It attacks. This is how German society suddenly finds itself hungry. I am not calling Germans dogs, so please do not misunderstand. However, the emergence of the Nazis and Hitler was significantly supported by America's economic crisis. At that time, the German people were already looking for someone to unite them. Here, Hitler also emerges. Hitler, as a child, had a functioning brain. He is not very intelligent. He inherits a sum of money. He takes that money and goes to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, which is a very prestigious school. This is a flashy, prestigious art academy. Being accepted there is very important. He is very hopeful because he is making paintings and believes he is very successful in art. They do not accept him into the academy. They say, "What kind of painting is this?" In fact, what you see on the screen right now are some human figures he drew, which he rejects because they are not very good. These are all Hitler's drawings. Hitler was already suspicious during that incident at the academy. In the 1800s and 1900s, the Habsburg dynasty was at its peak, and the Jews were very wealthy. They had secured beautiful corners in the empire. Hitler is also targeting wealthy Jews from here. The Jews, especially the Polish Jews that Hitler exterminated in these camps, were present in France, within the borders of the Roman Empire, and even in Spain as far back as the 4th century. So they have already settled in Europe. The Habsburgs and the Jews are becoming very powerful. This is because the Jews are more involved with money. Since they deal with money, the empire loves them very much, and they are growing within themselves. At the beginning of the Middle Ages, between 800 and 1100, Europe is tolerant. Religion is no longer a major problem. At that time, there were about 1.5 million Jews living in Europe. They were not called to war within the Christian Union. Because they were not called, they placed importance on education and literacy. They were more established in their systems. They valued cleanliness and were healthy. And in fact, when the black baby thing hit Europe, there weren't many losses from these. The Jews are not dying in large numbers. Now, in two areas, the Jews are progressing very well: medicine and finance. The palace's most needed things are finance and medicine. Kings keep the Jews close to themselves. The closer they keep them, the more they corner the market. The wise are the alert. By the year 1300, their pots will be full. But in 1300, monks and priests are teaching society to hate Jews, especially when things go wrong. Even in the Easter homeland, Jews begin to perform scenes depicting the murder of Jesus in a theatrical sense. It consciously advocates for a hatred of Jews in society. In the 14th century, while they were being harvested in Karababa, Jews were said to be saving their lives, and the churches claimed that while nothing happened to them, our Christians were dying, and they are the ones to blame. It was suggested that Jews were somehow involved. Therefore, by around the year 1500, the only safe part of Europe left for the Jews is the East. In other words, they are fleeing further, towards the Russians. This is the story of the Jews seeking refuge in Poland and Poland being economically strong. Let me say that from the beginning. One of the reasons Hitler hates Poland is because the Jews are there. Hitler already does not like the Jews. There is another story. Christianity, which is very serious in its beliefs. Within Christianity, lending with interest is prohibited. Not in Judaism. All moneylenders are Jewish. The power of money lies with the Jews. In fact, Jews are often massacred because of this money. Their properties are being confiscated, but the pressure on them increases significantly during the Crusades. Jewish communities along the Rhine and Danube rivers were completely massacred in the 1100s, around 1096. The German Crusade was launched against Islam, as were the Second Crusade and the First Crusade. But along the way, they also eliminated the Jews between 1290 and 1396. Jews were expelled in Europe. As they were expelled, these events became more significant. In 1396, when 100,000 Jews were expelled from France. They are being expelled from Austria. In 1420, they are gradually moving towards Poland. There are many Jews in Poland. This is also why Hitler's move to start. World War II was the story of slowly taking over Polish territory. In 1924, the Nazi Party already existed, founded by Antonio Rexler, and Hitler had joined this party. But in the 1924 elections, they were only around 7%. By 1928, the situation was even worse. Nobody likes the Nazis. They only get about 2.5%, so they are not taken seriously. But the economic crisis of 1929 changes things. In 1933, Hitler comes to power. Power is passing into Hitler's hands. The governance of Germany is now in his control. He comes with the title of German Chancellor, that is, the Prime Minister. The German president at that time, Hindenburg, says that he is now reluctantly giving his power to Hitler, cursing as he does so, saying, "Damn it, I love the ugly face I have come to love." Hitler is placing his men in every corner. He is silencing the unions and taking control of the press of that time. He is infiltrating every part of the state. By instilling fear in the opposition parties, he is burying them in silence. Hitler suddenly says, a year later, that either the office of the German president is unnecessary, or he says something similar. It is a period when Hindenburg was also gone. He says, "I am cancelling the presidency." The German president says, "I am the president, and I am also the chancellor, damn it." And Hitler emerges with the concept of the leader. Perhaps, if the Hamburg German president had not died a year later, Hitler would not have been able to do this. But as soon as the position of the German president becomes vacant, he seizes control of the country as both the German president and German chancellor. At the same time, if we go to the other side of the map, Japan is occupying China's Manchuria region on the other side of the world. Now look, I will again cut my own words with honey here. In fact, it is the year 1910 and the Japanese have not yet left the islands. They have not yet reached the mainland of China, more precisely Asia, where China is located. That is Korea. Look, just 1 year later, in 1911, the Japanese had already occupied Korea and they are on this land. They are neighbors to China. The year is 1930, 1931. China is still in these lands, but just 1 year later, in 1931, as they move into 1932, they are significantly expanding their territory in the Manchuria region, nearly doubling the land they hold. They are occupying it, taking a large piece away from China. And when it tore this piece away from China, right above it are the resources of Russia. Next door is its neighbor, Mongolia. A little further down is China itself. The Japanese could actually have advanced into all three territories and could have taken large pieces from all three. Because there are natural resources and industry here, the land is larger. It is not an island like Japan. In 1937, Japan declares war on China in a way that will start World War II. It wants even more land. If we go to America on the opposite shore, Franklin Roosevelt is winning the elections, 1933 the same year. In 6 years, he brings America out of the Burhan. Warplanes and warships are becoming possible to produce. America is aiming to be the master of the seas in another war. Go back to Europe. The Germans are developing a new war tactic in Europe, the lightning war tactic called British Creek. On the front, they will now tear through the defense from a single point. The France front in World War I serves as a lesson for them. Hitler does not hide his preparations for war. They are all caught up in their own economic troubles. The 1929 crisis hit them hard. No one is willing to enter a war. The public is not willing either. Hitler sees that in 1936, no one is speaking out against him. You know that Ruhr industrial region that was under French control. This is sending troops to the Rhine region. France and England do not care about this. Over time, they say that the Rhine region is not very important, and they will handle it. During this year, they are significantly strengthening the army here by sending reinforcements. America and England will later lose 3 million soldiers during the war in order to overcome this. Think about such an important place. The English, the French, and so on are doing things and not caring about Germany. Hitler later says in his memoirs that if France had intervened that day, he would have fled like a dog. Look, actually, World War II might not have started, and Hitler might not have emerged. Lack of vision is foolishness. Hitler is turning his focus to the east. He is also incorporating the Austrian government. They say they will provide political support as well. They say, all right, we are with you as Austria if you go to war. Hitler sees that France is not making any noise. He occupies the Sudetenland region in Czechoslovakia. Then he moves into the territories located to the southeast, where there were already Germans. He even calls the British and French prime ministers to Munich. Imagine, land is being seized and the English prime minister is summoning the French prime minister to his feet. He says, let's make a deal. I will take over some places, but shall we agree on it? Then they go. Because the English and the French also don't care much about this Czechoslovakian territory. They say, okay, we won't make a fuss. They sign the agreement. They say things like, I won't attack you. He says, I broke Versailles. He asks, there's no problem, right? No one comments. They call him crazy. Leave him. Because, from the perspective of the English and the French, a piece of Czechoslovakian territory is not very important. This madman does not stop there. In 1939, he invades all of Czechoslovakia. Now we need to move on to the screen here. Look, the year is 1934. Luxembourg is still standing, and this region has not yet played a role. The Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia is still intact. By the time we reach 1935, Luxembourg is lost. In 1936, now we will move towards 1939. Pay attention to the year in the corner of the screen. As we move towards 39, Hitler is gradually starting to consume Czechoslovakia. Let me go back to 1938. Look, let me go back to 38. They are also uniting with Austria. There is no situation of occupying Austria, but it is joining Hitler. Now pay attention to the upper part of Czechoslovakia. Gradually, it starts to take over the region from here as well. If we go a little further, just 1 year later, in 1940, Poland is completely occupied and Czechoslovakia is completely occupied. There are very bold moves. The year is 1941, and we are paying attention to the map again. This time, it captures France. I will explain this to you in the coming minutes. Within just 1 year, it completely loses the Netherlands, Belgium, and France in 1941. The French, they can no longer receive support. Only a small region of France remains. We will talk about Vichy anyway. In 1942, they will start to take land from Russia. Serbia is also joining him. In 1940, Denmark has also been taken in the meantime. It is moving upward. The Vichy region has now completely fallen, including Lyon and Maassen, in 1943. By 1944, almost all of Europe had joined him. Are you aware of how large an area he has conquered? And in 1945, Germany begins to decline. Of course, we will explain all of this completely on the war map. I wanted you to know a summary up front. He is doing it not for the lands, but for the gold in the central bank in Prague. Next is Poland, as the Jews have a lot of money there. Hitler thinks that a major war won't break out anyway and enters the Danzig region under Polish control. This region has been a constant source of tension between Poland and Germany since the 12th century, okay? The Versailles Treaty incorporates this area into Poland, but 95% of it is German. Therefore, Hitler's concern is to unite East Prussia, which you see on the screen, with Germany. Continuously producing weapons is not easy and comes with a cost. Hitler also has powerful bombers at that time, and he relies on them. He comes to Czechoslovakia and says he will bomb you. Czechoslovakia is afraid. Therefore, the Czechs give in without much struggle. But when he takes over Czechoslovakia, he seizes both the gold in the central bank and the industry of the Czechs to be able to produce new weapons. The Czech industry is very strong at that time. They were producing tanks at factories like Skoda. Therefore, capturing Czechoslovakia to develop armored vehicle technology is a tremendous genius. It is a great foolishness for the English and the French as well. If you hand over both the central brand and the industry to Germany, then you won't be crying later. I believe that up to this point we have discussed the economic crises between World War I and World War II, the rise of Hitler, and the shaping of the European map. In the next video, we will really dive into World War II together. How did that war start? How did Hitler come to power? How did America enter the war? Because I couldn't just leave you with the gap between World War I and World War II. We needed to see how Europe was shaped. This video ends here. The second video is coming. And we are diving into World War II. Let's move on to that video now, if you haven't gotten bored.